So Reverend Dave is a United Methodist minister, and he also has been through the Unity teaching, which is another branch of New Thought, and that he feels positive living is something that works out really well for him, and he has some wonderful people he's attended to for over 3 decades. And so we're very fortunate to have him. He had moved to Utah, and with the Mormons there, even though he still had the same last name, he brings a wealth of experience to us. So be prepared to have an even richer life today. Please welcome Reverend Dave Moorman.
I am Elder Moorman, but I'm not a Mormon elder. And we once had a cat, which we named Knackle. It was the Mormon's Tabby Knackle. Okay, I got all the good ones out of the way. I heard the service today. Actually, I was kind of planning on Thursday before we had our accident and everything. You know, the world turns upside down, spins on a dime and tosses out 3 cents at you. My jokes are working well here. I like you people. I was thinking about Thanksgiving. And here's the thing to remember, since we're in the midst of a time that is not easy. And for my wife, Sherry, it is exceedingly not easy. Not only does she have the pain and the medication and the effects of the medication in places that shouldn't be. I mean, it's just one thing after another. We've got to remember that, as I say to the congregation every single morning, every single Sunday morning, we start off with, God is good. And they respond, all the time. God is good. All the time. All the time, God is good. But sometimes it takes a moment or two. God will be good soon. Or God is good in the midst of it all, because in the process of things going sideways and upside down and being slammed around, the goodness of God's grace is beginning to shape things in a new and great way. My great Thanksgiving story started around Thanksgiving in 1981. My mother-in-law passed away. She had a heart attack and died. And we were in Utah at the time, and we flew out, and then we went to the service for her in St. Louis, and we rode back with my father-in-law, Grandpa Jack, back to the family farm north of Columbia, Missouri, about halfway across the state. And he had a little farm there that was mostly woods everywhere. Missouri woods. These are very deceptive woods. You try to think you know what's going on, but you don't. We were there at his place the day after we got back, and we had some things to do in town, always things to do in town. Paperwork, Social Security, that sort of thing. And we were looking for the papers, which Grandpa Jack was particularly not good at organizing. Our son, who was 6 years old at the time, was underfoot. And he was just being really a pain. And we said, I don't think I said go get lost, but I said go out and play with the dogs. Grandpa Jack had 4 dogs, 5, and they loved to run and chase, and he ran and chased, and he went out in the woods, and they led him forward, and then they chased him on, and they led him forward, and they chased him on, and when we found the paperwork, we looked up, and there was no Matt. He wasn't in the front of the house, he wasn't in the barnyard, he wasn't anywhere, and the dogs were gone too. And so we hollered for him, and all we got back was an echo from the next hill over. And finally we said, we got to go find him. And we get panicky, out in the woods, out in the middle of nowhere. So my wife and I, we went out around the barn, around the side of the farmyard, into the woods, and the woods were so deceptive. It was one of those gray days that only Missouri can produce. You have a gray day now and then, it's nowhere near. It was solid gray sky with a little bright spot up there that might be the sun. The woods were just these thin little trees. There weren't very many big trees, but there were so many of them. And you look and you think you're seeing clearly, but there's this, the word slipped my mind, screen of trees, an open screen. I looked over and Sherry was gone. And then she took 2 steps and there she was. It was magic. But the woods, it was November, 1st of November, and all the leaves had fallen, and our voices were sucked up by the leaves, and our whistle, we have a family whistle, it was blown away in the wind, and we searched, and we traveled, and we'd down at the bottom of a ravine, and we'd look up that hill. If we could just get to the top of that hill, we could see. We knew we'd just climb up there, we could see for miles. We climbed to the top, and there was another valley and another hill the same height, and you couldn't see anything. And we got lost. We were so frantically running through the woods, yelling for Matt, whistling, that we wound up a full half a mile farther up the road than we thought we were. And so we hiked back to the farm, and Grandpa Jack had done the right thing. He just called the sheriff, and the sheriff sent out a deputy, and the deputy's car was in the drive. And the deputy said that it's going to be okay, we're going to find him, we have our resources. He called an airplane and a helicopter, he'd put it on the news, people would be showing up soon. He'd called the Equine, the horse club. They would be coming out. He'd even called the reform school in Boonville, about 40 miles away, to get, not their clients, their dog. their search dog would be there soon. And the people started showing up. College kids and farmer ranchers and workers, anybody who had free on a cold November day. That was a large number of people. The pickup trucks and SUVs were lining the road, the county road, about a half a mile in each direction. One fella came up to us, older fella, says, I know there's 4 or is it 5 old wells out there. I'm going to go check and see that he hasn't fallen into one of them. I see him walking away. Or is it 6? Others came and headed out. The helicopter came chopping in. The airplane was crisscrossing the sky. We wanted to go out too. We wanted to find our son. But the best thing to do was just stand by the patrol car, by the sheriff's car, and listen to the radio. The dog came, and they showed him one of Matt's socks, and he kind of sniffed at it and then headed away. And they had a radio so we could hear what was going on, and we had moments of our hopes being lifted up. The airplane reported they saw a boy out in the field with some dogs. We're going to circle around and check. And somebody else, they circled around and checked. And they said, did he have a gun? Wrong boy. Up and down, just like those woods. You think you've got to the top, it'll be okay. But then it's just another valley waiting for you. The people handling the dog called and said the dog had lost the scent. This guy who was out looking for all the wells had crossed right in front of the dog and had ruined the scent. And so they're just out there wandering. Finally, the horses came. They unloaded the trailers, saddled them up, hopped on, and the deputy was really clear. He says, those horse people will find them, and if they don't, we've got the National Guard on tap, and they'll be bringing out the big searchlights and the helicopters and all of their men. We will find the boy. But we didn't know that. And we stood by that cop car, straining to make that static come into something clear in our lives. Baptist Church, Women's Auxiliary showed up, sandwiches, cocoa, coffee, visited with them a little bit, took some of the edge off, and the local radio station sent out a remote truck. And the guy was there, and he was interviewing everybody, and it was a play-by-play of the whole day of finding the lost boy. And they were very kind. They didn't come to us, because while we were the news, we were not the news. you see. To the people in the community, it was about the community doing what they were doing. The end came almost as a surprise. One of the college kids came bursting in from the woods through the brush behind the barn, came running towards, they found him. And I hopped up and I ran. I said, which way? Where is he? I've got to be there. And he says, he's back that way. And I kept pushing that direction. And he says, but they're taking him by horseback down the road. And I suddenly realized that if I went looking for him where he was, he wouldn't be there, and then I'd be the one who was lost in the woods. So rather sheepishly, I turned around and returned back beside the sheriff's car. But they had found him. And after maybe too long, it felt like, they came down on horseback, a whole string of horses, and he was behind the rider in the second horse, passing between all those cars and trucks, and he was wondering what was going on. Dazed. And they handed him down to us, and I want to tell you, it was Christmas times 1,000. It was the most wonderful moment of Thanksgiving I have ever experienced, to have my son back. I know how the prodigal father felt. We always call it the prodigal son, but prodigal means to bounteously and generously give beyond anything expected. It was the prodigal father. He gave the money to the boy without any questions. The boy ran off, blew it, came back, and then he gave his love without question. And there it was, the love without question. The guy from the radio truck came up with a microphone and he said, young man, did you know you were lost? Great moment in radio. And they asked us, and I shared, and my wife shared, how incredibly thankful we were for all of those people, 100 people out there. And all of the services that were brought to bear. That helicopter could not have been cheap, and yet there it was. And we live blessed in a blessed country and place. Matt had a little bit of a reaction that night. Woke up with sweats and nightmares. Next day, we finally got those papers and took them into town. And my father-in-law kept saying, this is a lost boy. He went, oh. Had a big item in the newspaper. The radio ran the entire story the second day. They just played it all back. And a friend of ours who worked at the factory there said they all stopped to listen. The second time, too. We finally got back to Utah, and they had heard through the Associated Press that one of the people in Ogden had been lost, and they wanted a story. So I told them, and they got it wrong. Always do. In fact, that Associated Press had boiled down 6 or 8 hours of our lives into about this much. 70 words, maybe a few more. And while they scrunched it down, all of the easy things got blown up. There were, hundreds of 500 cars and 500 people, and the National Guard had come out, and it was just the whole thing is blown out of proportion. Because that's what we do. Have you noticed that? The farther it is from you, the smaller the experience has to get because of media. It's just the way it is. But since it got small, all the easy things get blown up. All the easy to say things get blown up. And that's us taking the story and the truth and trying to fit it into our acceptable lives the way we are. And that's not what the Thanksgiving is. The Thanksgiving is when our acceptable lives, the way they are tossed in a dryer and turned on to high, and we are tumbled around and around. Those who know It hurts. Yes, it's hard. Yes, and we're crazy. Yes, and God is good all the time. And right now you can't quite believe it, but there it is. And it's good. I have just a moment. I'm going to play a song for you. This song is called Hope. It was composed. I've only recently started writing down my songs, but it was composed when a dear lady in our church was driving down the road and a truck stopped and she ran into it and she was killed. So it's for Dorothy, but I just call it.
God is good all the time. My heart is full with Reverend Moorman's story. And I just want to take a moment to invoke the presence again. And just take a moment to know the God within each one of us, the Spirit that surrounds this room, in each heart, in each life. This is God. This is good. And this is perfect. And in recognizing this, I know that there is a wonderful Spirit in this center, in this room, just recognizing and loving each other, this center, and this wonderful Spirit. And in doing so, I just want to say, and so it is.